In the world of Frejagard, locals Lyrule and Winona bear witness to a plane crash. In modern Japan, 7 high school-age students dubbed the High School Prodigies have each excelled in their own fields to such a degree that each one is the world's best at his or her own craft. By chance, the 7 all happened to be on a plane at the same time. 4 days later, Prodigy leader Tsucasa Mikagami awakens in poor condition, though in the care of Lyrule as are the other Prodigies. He quickly realizes that he is no longer in Japan, or even in our world any longer, and demands that he be taken to the crash site. Realizing that he and the other Prodigies have been transported to Frejagard's Elm Village. 1 month later, a feast is held to celebrate the Prodigies' recovery. Though there is generally mirth at the occasion, when Winona recounts a legend of 7 travelers from another world, this angers her son Elk, already displeased by the lavish spendings of the village on this event, and he storms out of the banquet hall in anger after making the reasons for his displeasure known. Tsucasa, feeling guilty for imposing on the villagers, organizes the other Prodigies to find ways to help the villagers while also learning about the world and trying to find ways home. The next day, as Prodigy Ringo Ohoshi discusses with Tsucasa how Ringo plans to refine nearby bauxite into aluminum, just as she plans to leave a local patrol of soldiers comes by the village. Winona denies them any tribute, causing its leader to attempt to sexually harass her. But Tsucasa interrupts this and fights off the soldiers with the help of the other Prodigies. Later, he reinforces that each Prodigy should find a way to help that is in tune with his or her own talent, which he believes should be easy for them. But he also told them to hold back, because as Tsucasa stated, if we were to give it our all, we could end up ruining this world. Masato Sanada refuses to do business with Nutriland Trading Company due to their exorbitant prices. Elk finds this shocking as Nutriland is the only trading company in the area, to which Masato responds that they can make money anyway without living in anyone else's shadow, grabbing the attention of a nearby girl. Back at Elm Village, Lyrule thanks Tsukasa Mikagami for his and the other Prodigies' help for the villagers, though she worries that Elk's interactions with the others sent to trade may cause trouble for the village. Winona responds that this is the fault of Jackoi, the one who monopolized trading in Dormont for Nutriland, but Tsucasa believes that this should only make things easier for Masato to fix. At Dormont, Masato obtains a business permit by blackmailing the mayor via knowledge obtained by Shinobu Suratobai of the mayor's corruption in allowing Nutriland to gain a monopoly. Masato then announces his intent to a disbelieving Elk to teach the latter how to make money with just a business permit and no money, attracting Rue, the girl from earlier, who asks to be in on the company. Masato accepts due to her obvious greed, as that will make her a valuable asset to them. Later, Masato, accompanied by Elk and Rue, propositions some local men into doing their business at Masato's new Elm Trading Company by explaining to them that they'll make far more money there than at Nutriland. In return, they spread the word, leading to the Elm Company gaining large supplies of goods and, in return, soon attracting many customers due to their low prices, leading to the company doing extremely well within days. Though Elm Village soon has all the supplies that it could need, Masato stays at Dormont with Elk and Rue to destroy the Nutriland Company for their greed. Meanwhile, Jackoi has learned of Elm's existence, but deems them not to be a threat. However, he is quickly proven wrong when Masato's newest ware, some of Tsukasa's mayonnaise received quite well at Elm Village, proves very popular, leading to the captain of the vessel Sea Serpent discovering Elm and partnering with them. Jackoi indignantly decides that he will open a market to compete with Elm, which Shinobu quickly reports to Masato. However, Masato does not worry, as he reveals that Nutriland is already too late, for Masato now has followers who will destroy Nutriland for him. Ringo Ohoshi reveals her latest creation, aluminum shovels, to Tsukasa Mikagami. Seeing her overworked, he tells her to get some rest, reflecting on how all of the Prodigies have likewise been overworked recently. Meanwhile, in Dormont, Jackoi is alarmed when he finds out that Masato Sanada's Elm Trading Company has bought all of his wares and workers. Masato reveals that Jackoi's workers left because he laid them off for patrolling land routes, given that the harbor was his best source of income, allowing Masato to take advantage of that for himself. Masato further lectures Jackoi on trust, saying that the trust of one's employees is more important than money. When Jakoi, realizing that his business is about to be crushed, pleads for mercy, Masato grants it, promising to work out the specifics with him to avoid a monopoly on Elm's behalf. Later, Masato reveals to a confused Elk and attentive Rue that this had been his plan all along, to saddle Jakoi's Nuchelin trading company with what Elm couldn't use. As Masato gloats about being called the Demon Lord back in his world due to these sorts of tactics, a company of guards arrives to take away Rue, as she was formerly a slave and her owners won her back. In response, Masato once again shows his more compassionate side, buying Rue from the slavers so that she can be free as she was before and making all involved very happy. Back at Elm Village, Tsucasa is informed by Shinobu Saratobi that she's learned much about the magic system of the world. There are 4 elements: fire, water, earth, and air, and communing with the spirits of those elements grants people power, though it's extremely rare for anyone to be able to do so. She also reveals that she's learned that the legend of the 7 heroes that Winona told them about used to be believed by a religion called the Seven Light Faith, but that, along with all other religions, was crushed by the Empire now dominating the world when it took over. Though Tsucasa believes that the faith is their only hope to escaping the world, Shinobu worries that they will be unable to leave without a travel permit from Marquis Findolf, who is known to be a despicable man. However, this discussion is interrupted by the revelation of a public steam bath that Aoi Akijo and Kumasa have built. As the villagers enjoy the bath, they are interrupted by the arrival of Prince Akatsuki, who reveals that many of the villagers, while hunting, ran into a monster called the Chief of the Forest. Tsucasa, Winona, Aoi, and Kane Kanzaki rush off to stop the monster, where they are informed that Mayor Olga of Elm Village was mortally wounded by the monster. Kane inspects him and discovers that she can save him via her medical skills. She proceeds to do so as Aoi, using her swordsmanship skills, takes down the monster. With Olga's injuries mended by Kane and the monster slain by Aoi, the foursome return triumphantly to Elm Village. However, at the village, spirits are low. While Masato, Elk, and Rue have arrived back at town, they couldn't have come at a worse time. Many of Feindorf's guardian knights, led by the Silver Knight, Inzaghai, have come to detain the villagers. Masato, Elk, Rue, Akatsuki, and various other villagers are trapped in a building, where they are informed by Inzaghai that they are to be punished for laying hands on coins, which is a treasonous offense for peasants to do. Masato protests that this is not a fair excuse, but Inzaghai replies that he needs no excuse. When Tsukasa's group returns, the building containing the others is alight and Inzaghai and his knights are nowhere to be seen. Though many despair, Tsucasa reveals that Akatsuki can save the others through knowledge of how to escape locked coffins as learned in his magic shows. Sure enough, all of those inside the building are soon saved thanks to Akatsuki. However, Akatsuki reveals that Marquis Findolf ordered all this. Furthermore, Tsucasa realizes that Lyrule is nowhere to be seen. Lyrule awakens to find herself captured in the Marquis Findolf's castle, a development that troubles her. In the Burning Elm Village, Tsucasa Mikagami makes preparations to negotiate with the Marquis for Elm's citizens' survival at the potential cost of losing Lyrule, but Winona persuades him otherwise, saying that the villagers will lose their humanity if they sacrifice Lyrule instead of rescuing her. Tsucasa reluctantly agrees to fight once he realizes that the villagers are willing to die to rescue Lyrule if need be. However, as prompted by Masato Sanada, he points out that he must go back on his earlier vision of not interfering with their world to accommodate the assault. Instead, to win the assault, the villagers' civilization must advance by 500 years, destroying the world as they know it. In the Marquis's castle, the excited Marquis enjoys Lyrule, who has been brought to him by Inzaghai. The Marquis gropes Lyrule, which Lyrule stands, thinking that she'll save the villagers if she lets him do this. However, when he tries to kiss her, he and Lyrule are blasted away from each other by magic. The injured Marquis orders Inzaghai to tie up Lyrule. Outside the castle, all of the villagers have gathered in an all-out assault. Ringo Ohoshi fires a cannon into the castle wall, allowing the villagers to pour in. Though they are outnumbered, they manage to survive due to Ringo-crafted Duralumin shields, Elk's iron arrow firing, sight-equipped bow, and the timely intervention of Aoi Akijo, Winona, and lastly Prince Akatsuki's innate combat skills. Meanwhile, Shinobu Sarutobi guides Tsukasa through the castle's halls to find Lyrule. The two are stopped by the Imperial mage officer, Gale Stafford, the only mage in the Marquisate, but Shinobu manages to predict and dodge all of his blows before electrocuting him. Inzaghai arrives with his soldiers, leaving Shinobu to fight him while Tsukasa continues alone to save Lyrule. In a private room, Tsukasa finds Lyrule bound to a window. As Tsukasa takes stock of the situation, he is shot through the chest by a concealed Marquis Findolf, leading Tsukasa to collapse to his knees. After gloating about having shot Tsukasa and likely butchered Elm's villagers, Findolf begins to cut Lyrule's clothing off as retribution for the attack. An angered Tsukasa stands back up, revealing that his suit is made of aramid fibers and is thus immune to normal guns, then pulls out a modern handgun and shoots Findolf's dagger out of his hand. Findolf, fearing for his life, tries first to bribe Tsukasa, then tries to threaten him, but Tsukasa stands firm, saying that he fights for democracy, which Findolf and the Emperor will never give him. As Findolf laughs at the absurdity of the idea of democracy, Tsukasa shoots Findolf in the head with a rubber bullet from his gun, knocking him unconscious. Tsukasa frees Lyrule, but when she returns to consciousness, a voice not belonging to her gives him a dire warning of the world's apocalyptic fate before returning to her normal self. As a tear-struck Lyrule thanks Tsukasa for his and the others' efforts, the others look on happily, though Tsukasa realizes that their journey is just beginning. In front of a large crowd in Dormont, a convertible truck drives up. With the aid of his rabbit-costumed helpers Aoi Akijo, Kane Kanzaki, and Ringo Ohoshi, Prince Akatsuki appears and performs magic tricks for the crowd, culminating in making a large display of mayonnaise jars appear, which he and the others offer to the crowd if they pledge allegiance to Akatsuki as their new god. The crowd eagerly accepts this offer. Meanwhile, Lyrule expresses disappointment to Winona in that Lyrule has not yet been able to thank Tsukasa Mikagami for rescuing her. While Akatsuki continues his tricks, Tsukasa discusses with Masato Sanada how using the power of religion should unify the people of Dormont. Let the 7 prodigies easily pass power to the people should they manage to find a way to return home. And as they are calling their religion, the 7 light faith allow them to get contacts of any believers of the old religion of the same name. In a snowy field, Shinobu Sarutobi pressures Elk onwards to learn more information at their destination of Butchwold. Back at Dormont, Mayor Walter von Hazerad, seeing the allegiance of the people behind the 7 light faith and Akatsuki, who continues to give people ever-increasing quantities of mayonnaise, decides that Dormont is finished and prepares to leave, only to be stopped by Tsukasa in a maid outfit, presenting himself as one of the angels of the 7 light faith. Tsukasa explains to Walter that the faith would like to cooperate with him, and will give him a much better deal than if he were to flee elsewhere, where he would be persecuted both by them and by the Frejagard Empire. The next day, Walter arrives in the convertible truck, announcing that Dormont will henceforth be governed by the 7 light faith. The general reaction to this is quite positive, but one man, Zest Bernard, seems worried by this news. That night, while looking at a picture of Tsucasa as a maid, something that Ringo becomes quite excited over, the prodigies discuss their plans for the future, including Kane making a factory for more medicine, Aoi protecting Akatsuki due to his god status, Ringo making more electricity while Masato gets her parts, and Tsucasa going to elect a leader of his new order of guards repurposed into Knights of the 7 Light Faith. In the local barracks, Bernard, the captain of the guard, packs his things and leaves to a bar, where he is encountered by Tsukasa. Tsukasa praises Zest Bernard abilities and the trust that others have in him, ultimately attempting to recruit him into the knightly order, but Bernard simply explains that he's no longer in the guard for personal reasons and leaves the room. When Tsukasa returns home, Masato is shocked that Tsukasa's plan did not work, but Tsukasa simply resolves to talk to Bernard the following day. The following day, Bernard is found by Tsukasa once again. Tsukasa tries to convince Bernard to join as captain of the new knightly order, only to be interrupted by Bernard's young daughter, Eri, who Bernard explains is the most important thing to him since his wife passed away. While Eri plays nearby, Bernard explains that he doesn't want to be forced to be a knight loyal to the faith above all else if it means being sent away from Eri. But Tsucasa explains that all he wants to do is bring about a future where everyone can do what they see fit and protect those closest to them. Bernard, enamored by the idea of a truly free future and the ability to protect Eri more intimately, pledges himself to Tsukasa's knightly order. Later, Tsucasa hears a few nobles being angry at him and mentally notes to keep an eye on their behavior in the future. In a bar in Buchwald, a disguised Shinobu gets information out of a drunken guard about Oslo el Gustav, the local mage officer, one of the most powerful men in the kingdom as a result of his great actions in wartime. Shinobu gets Elk to go with her to investigate just how powerful Oslo el Gustav is. This metric is measured moments later when Oslo el Gustav is confronted by Inzaghai. Berating Inzaghai for his failure to stop the Prodigies and their armies from taking over Dortmund, Gustav beheads Inzaghai in a single stroke and resolves to crush Dortmund himself. In his office, Tsucasa comes to the tough decision to implement political reforms. But he also makes new legislation to modernize the livelihoods of the townspeople. However, Tsukasa's friends are worried that he's pushing himself thin. Even so, Tsucasa can't rest due to the Empire's plan to invade Feindorf. Consequently, he focuses his effort in modernizing the Seven Lights army. While Tsucasa contemplates his next steps on modernizing the village, Lyrule can't stop thinking about him. She believes that Tsucasa detests her as he refuses all her attempts to repay him for rescuing her. However, Masato assures that Tsucasa is only doing this out of guilt. It seems that Tsucasa told the Elm villagers not to save her from Marquis Feindorf. Even though Masato reassures her, Lyrule confronts Tsucasa. However, things don't go as expected. Instead of returning her feelings, he reveals his feelings for his father, the former Japanese prime minister. At first, he admired his father. However, he learned that he's as corrupt as other politicians. Unable to stand idly by, he and his friends expose his father's schemes. Unfortunately, this ends with his father's execution and his mother's hatred towards him. As a result, he vowed to himself to become a selfless leader, putting the needs of the people first. This revelation saddens Lyrule. But even so, she tells him that she'll always be by his side. Meanwhile, Rue is having a hard time learning and solving mathematical problems. Luckily, the other Prodigies are there to help. Elsewhere, Shinobu and Elk discover a dark secret of a village. Shinobu and Elk have discovered a dark secret, and even though the people at Kokonono village proclaiming how great it is to live here, Shinobu can't help of being suspicious. It seems that even though the villagers are starving, they don't date to eat the food served at the inn. The townspeople have been secretly drugging travels before feasting on the unsuspecting victim's flesh. Meanwhile, Duke Gustav's soldiers punish Melinda for breaking an official law, always keep your clothes clean. But Shinobu gives herself instead to their leader, Silver Knight Jean du LeBlanc. It seems that Melinda tried to warn Shinobu and Elk of the cannibalistic nature of her hometown. Simultaneously, Elk confronts the innkeeper, Imarata, over the dead travelers. Full of guilt, Imarata explains that Kokonono was a lively farming village. However, that all changed when Duke Gustav took over. He came with insane laws to beautify Kokonono. One of them is that the villagers have to keep their clothes clean, meaning they could no longer farm for food or earn money. This ridiculous legislation has pushed the villagers to the point of cannibalism to survive, which many of them regret. Even though Jean is part of Gustav's army, Jean frees Shinobu. She later reveals that she's a member of the Azure Brigade. The Azure Brigade is a group that actively opposes Duke Gustav's tyranny. Duke Gustav grows angry upon learning his army hasn't attacked the rebels at Feindorf. His fury pushes him to the point of using his magic spear, Heaven's Flames, to destroy Dortmund. Meanwhile, Tsucasa and Ringo learn about the impending attack and use many anti-aircraft missiles. But to no avail, the spear still manages to hit Dortmund. Gustav's spear, Heaven's Flames, has hit Dortmund's noble district. Chaos and destruction break out, sending countless civilians to flee the city. Thankfully, Mayor Walters has set in motion the evacuation plan proposed by Tsucasa. Even so, death and blood cover the streets due to Gustav's fire spirits coming from his spear. According to Lyrule, the only way to stop the carnage and spread caused by heaven's flames is to destroy the spear itself. Their only hope of achieving this is Ringo's remaining missile. AoE volunteers to escort the weapon and protect it from its enemies. Thanks to this, the missile destroys the spear and stops the spread of heaven's flames. However, Gustav senses the spear's destruction on Val's revenge. As the recovery efforts in Dormont continue, Lyrule reveals that the creature who possessed left her with abilities. Lyrule now understands magic and can speak with spirits. Consequently, she wants to use her blessing to help others. Now, with everything said and done, it's time to make a surprise attack on Gustav's army. Gustav will not rest until his enemies are defeated. He demands Marquis Arclide and Marquis Butchwold and their forces to invade Findolf. However, the noblemen are making their objections known. They are not prepared to engage the opposition, especially during the winter. It's an idea that will lead to an inevitable loss. Even so, they march. As soon they begin the attack, Arclide and Butchwold realize they are no match for Zest's forces who are carrying heavy weaponry. They immediately surrender to the Seven Light Faith. Meanwhile, the Azure Brigade attack Duke Gustav at his compound with Jean and Shinobu confronting the tyrannical Duke. And although they defeat Gustav,
how dare you!
he has a last trick up his sleeve. Unexpectedly, the Duke blows himself with his magic. Everything goes back to the time before Gustav took over. However, the question remains, can the Prodigies trust the Azure Brigade and become allies? Despite their help, Tsucasa doesn't trust the Azure Brigade, especially their new leader, Count Conrad. However, before they can continue with the restoration efforts, Kane suggests that Tsucasa and Ringo take some time off. They agree, and Tsucasa asks Ringo to accompany him to a popular food spot in Dormont. The sudden invitation leads Ringo to believe that Tsucasa is asking her on a date. Nervous for the upcoming date, she asks Aoi and Kane for help. However, their knowledge on this specific subject is even lower than Ringo's. Luckily, Shinobu is there to save the day. She suggests for Ringo to follow a multi-step that goes from holding hands to indirect kissing. Tsucasa and Ringo are forced to walk through town in disguise to fend off unwanted attention. It's the perfect opportunity for Ringo to implement her plan. But before she gets to hold hands with Tsucasa, they've arrived at the restaurant. Luckily, the following step, indirect kiss, does work when they switch drinks. She passes out in embarrassment. During a flashback, Ringo remembers her upbringing with her mother. The latter was artificially inseminated to create a prodigy child. When Ringo, at a young age, started showing her talents, her mother abandoned her out of spite. All alone and left with nothing, she contemplated her existence. One day, Tsucasa appeared at her school, and since that day has given her broken objects to fix. These tasks gave her a reason to live and consequently led her to fall in love with her savior. Ringo awakens from her dream, and she suddenly realizes she's on Tsukasa's lap. She thanks him for being there for her. It's thanks to him that she's alive today. Conrad has plans for the Azure Brigade to rejoin the Arajigard Empire. However, Tsucasa predicted their betrayal and is now concocting a plan to counteract this. Meanwhile, an infectious new disease called septicemia has spread amongst the commoner. Kane is doing all she can to find a cure. However, there's a penicillin shortage. To make matters worse, Count Sorrentius of the Medical Guild demands that Kane allow his guild to sell opium to the sick. However, Kane refuses this. She instead makes a deal with Sorrentius that she'll cure the villages with coal. But if she fails, she will allow him to sell the addictive drug. With Lyrule's knowledge of magic and Kane's understanding of chemistry, they turn coal into a cure, and enough so to cure all of the patients. Seeing that he's lost the bet, Count Cerentius and his men try to ruin the medicine, and in such the Seven Lights' reputation. Luckily, Kane is there to save the day. Elsewhere, Ringo is putting the final touches on her latest project, an intercontinental ballistic missile. Simultaneously, General Nero allows Conrad and the Azure Brigade to rejoin the Empire. But there's a condition. They have to destroy the Seven Light Faith. Conrad's Knight Razenak and his men try to kill Jean. Luckily, Shinobu gets there on time and kills them all. Jean finds out that Conrad is responsible for killing her former leader and mentor. She's devastated after learning of this betrayal. Shinobu assures her that the Seven Light Faith will help achieve Azure Brigade's original goals. Gustav is alive. All this time, he was hiding as Tanganyika. In his fury, Gustav kills Conrad for destroying his golden statue. He then turns his attention to Jean and Shinobu, who were hiding in the same room. With all his might, Gustav destroys the castle, killing everyone inside. Luckily, Jean and Shinobu manage to escape. But before he can exact his plan of revenge, Ringo blows him up with her new ballistic missile. The sight can be seen from Dortmund. The Prodigies contemplate the use of such a destructive weapon. As a result, Tsucasa believes that people will hate him for using such a lethal means with other nations. But before he can put much more thought, he and the Prodigies must give a speech. Despite the trials and tribulations, the government has become one, and now it will be known as the Elm Republic. This new nation must defend itself as a republic and not under a dictatorship. While giving the speech, a Gustav appears and starts attacking the Prodigies. The rest of the Prodigies try to fight this new Gustav, but they are no match against him. When he leaps toward Tsucasa, the latter pulls out a gun and shoots Gustav. His final words to the leader of the Prodigies is a warning. In another location, a trio from the Yamato Empire and General Nero observe the events in Dortmund. They feel that the Seven Light Faith may be an obstacle to their plans. This is the end of my video, so please watching all of my anime recap series. Thanks for watching.